Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another bite-sized video looking at the contents within the live letter part 45 that took place today, the 16th of July 2018, hosted by Naoki Yoshida and Foxconn in Kyoto. So the live letter was broken into two parts. The first part will be content leading up to and including patch 4.4, and the second half has special guests and they're talking about the Monster Hunter World collab with a lot of information. So without further ado, let's look at it. The first thing they open with is that patch 4.36, consisting of Eureka Pagos, is actually releasing on August the 7th. Was somewhat to be expected considering Heaven on High needs a little bit of leeway before they add more content. So August 7th is your date. They also include a lot of screenshots here of the Forbidden Land Eureka Pagos, which is the icy wonderland you see before you. They were going to show some demo gameplay off, but obviously they've got time constraints this week, considering all of the other content to feature from Monster Hunter. But they'll look at that in the future. So as you can see as we go through here, there's obviously Geralt working hard at his smith making you weapon upgrades, and everyone huddled around a fire because it's bloody cold there, I would imagine. They also include some footage here of the actual sort of flora and fauna you can expect. Everything from the cave life to the outdoors life is affected by this harsh coldness. And it looks really cool. Included in this is obviously something there that's a notorious monster. So next they look at some of the rewards, only some of the early ones. Obviously there'll be a lot more than this. The first one is actually like a little Morbol wearing a dress. This is obtained from presumably a notorious monster drop. And also another minion here that they want to feature that's hint not a Lalafell, but anyone who's played Final Fantasy XI knows exactly what that is. Next up, they want to look at weapon upgrades, and as a basis they wanted to first show off the Black Mage's upgrade. This does not have all of the spell effects working, as apparently they would blur horribly in motion, so it's not really good for screenshots. So they wanted to take a screenshot of this weapon upgrade without all of those spinning effects. So it does look cooler in person. However, this seems to be sort of like a spiky texture on this stave for Black Mage, with a sort of like evil sort of legion eye there, crown of thorns above it. I quite like that. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the other weapons, but if you're a Black Mage, that's a little bit of a sneak peek for you. Next up, they move straight on to the Final Fantasy XIV companion app. They basically go through all of the information we already knew about it, however that it's coming late July / early August, so it's literally just around the corner. Apparently the application is in its final debugging checking phase, and once they've done all of the final tests, they're going to submit it to the Apple and Google stores. We did a few videos on this before, so I'm not going to go through it too much, but essentially it allows you to list items from a marketplace whilst you're not at your PlayStation or PC and buy and sell, and actually has microtransactions to speed up processes, but both has a free version and a paid version monthly. So next up they look at the Feast Regional Championships, another thing I'm going to skip over completely, but let's move on to the main 4.4 content, which we're going to look at. This is the first live stream of this. There'll obviously be two, and this is the first part. So patch 4.4 is going to be called Prelude in Violet, and will be featuring a lot of prominent Garlean figures, and obviously Alphino, since he went that direction at the end of 4.3. So Prelude in Violet, patch 4.4, is releasing mid-September. They don't have any other date other than mid-September confirmation, which is obviously, again, just around the corner. We're getting a lot of content to look forward to. So what exactly is in 4.4? There's obviously new main scenario quests, as you would imagine. There's also new side story quests, the last part apparently of the Four Lords storyline. There's also Hildebrand added in a 4.45 release later on after the release, and also new side quests including the continuation of the Doman reconstruction storyline, taking up where we left off after finishing up upgrading most of the stuff in the Doman Enclave. There's new instance dungeons, and the first one will be called The Burn. This is a tentative title at the moment. They might call it something else, but essentially it will be taking place in the Burn, which is that giant white desert full of sand, full of lifeless death and destruction that we last saw Alphino sort of being attacked in. So that will be interesting to see, and presumably we'll be meeting up with Alphino, but we're definitely going that direction inside a dungeon. The next additional dungeon will be St. Mociane's Arboretum hard mode. It's always nice to revisit a dungeon now and again. St. Mociane's is one of my favourites. It's not really visited much in the Duty Finder. I don't get it to pop much, but a hard mode version is quite cool. To go back there and see some new monsters there will be quite fun. Apparently the idea behind the Burn is highly related to Solus, the first Garlean emperor, who actually saw the land being burned by the intense fighting between the primals, which is what spurred him to hate them so much. So that'll be an interesting storyline, and they actually have a screenshot of inside the burn. As you can see, this sort of like dead worm creature there. It looks like snow in this picture, but that's just lifeless white sand, as far as you can see, almost like ash. It's fantastic, isn't it? The next trial will be Suzaku, that's the tentative title for it. Suzaku will have a normal mode and an extreme mode, and this is presumably linked to the Forlord storyline. Next up, they're talking about the next part of the raid, which is the next part of Omega, which is actually going to be called Alphascape and Alphascape Savage. They were actually asked why they're not going with the name Omegascape, but apparently Omegascape sounds silly, so they decided to go with Alphascape instead, and it will prominently figure the character Alpha. Will Omega be summoned to deal with a warrior of light? Will Omega join the fray? Everything will be concluded and told from here on. Next up, battle system updates and job adjustments. Apparently there will be significant changes to role action slots. In fact, they're increasing the role actions that you can actually choose from up to a maximum of 10. Apparently this is flexible and not everything has been finalized at this point, but obviously they're looking at longer term goals than just having an increase in slots. This was the easiest option until the next expansion, where they're going to be looking at what exactly needs to be changed in terms of those role actions. But for now they're just going to make it so you can choose up to 10, which obviously means that you can pretty much have everything you'd want. Next up, they talk about a new PvP mode, which is the timed attack mode. Essentially, from what I can gather from the translation and information we have, it's essentially a attack this target and kill them within this time limit thing, and you gain points or something. Similar to sort of like certain characters in MOBAs where you have a timer and there's a picture of that character and you have to kill them, and the other people have to protect that person, or essentially the enemy team has to kill them. It should be interesting, not my cup of tea, but that's kind of cool. Obviously Pagos was announced, but they're already working on the next one. They already have a title for it, they don't want to talk about it. They're actually so far ahead with Eureka in terms of the third installment, but they don't want to release too much information on it, even though it's there, because basically it's just too early. Pagos isn't even out yet, but they already have that. So they're pretty happy about being ahead of schedule on that. Apparently with that third installment will be the Logos system, which is a new system to be added to the functionality similar to the Magia board, etc. But the Logos system is different depending on what roles you are. Apparently there will be actions that can allow, for example, a DPS to build threat and be a tank. So they're messing with game mechanics in Eureka in the third installment at least, and trying to sort of mess around with the sort of holy trinity of how the game works. It'll be very interesting to see, and obviously within Eureka being an instance and having different game mechanics and elemental levels, etc., they can do pretty much what they want. Apparently in 4.4 the Lost Canals of Uzenair will be updated with new dungeons added in there, which will be completely random. Essentially when you choose a door, you might access the old instance, or you might access a new dungeon within. It's completely random. That'll be really cool, and I'm looking forward to anything new to Lost Canals. So apparently there's a huge gathering and crafting update, including that of new recipes added that they don't want to talk about now, but apparently there's new fishing holes added to the game, including some in the Doman Enclave as part of the Doman reclamation effort. Zoe Aliapo is apparently getting her rewards adjusted, so whatever that means. They didn't go into it too much detail at this point, but any change is good if they're bringing it up to date. And apparently there's going to be upgrades to the Grand Company with a new rank. Apparently you're going to be able to obtain the rank of Captain. This also includes squadron updates under your command. This includes new command missions and new squadron missions to obtain this rank of Captain. The squadron command missions will be updated. They've took a lot of feedback from the AI in there. Hopefully they get it right this time. Some of the later dungeons have been a bit crap. The entry barrier to squadron missions will also be adjusted to make it easier for new players to enter, because obviously there's so many hoops you have to jump through at the moment, it's ridiculous. They're going to be updating you on that in a future dev blog likely. There's also housing updates. Apparently mannequins are being added to houses. This will allow you to essentially display items from a market board on this mannequin and then sort of mix and match items until you're happy with what you want, and then purchase those items outright, which is kind of cool, a new way of previewing your stuff. And in fact, with that RP, you're able to set your house to role-playing status if you want to make your house a shop, like a cafe and all, and you can use this feature to make it actually look like a cafe. It will enhance the roleplay features allowed, like actually making the retainers serve you food and so on. So they're actually working to make people much happier in all parts of the game, and the RP crowd is going to be extremely excited by this. Hell, even I'm excited by this and I don't RP. Apparently there's a new gate event being added to the Gold Saucer, which is a giant jumping puzzle on this statue. Apparently they're planning to do this with a lot of new landmarks in the game and include them as gates inside the Gold Saucer. This particular jumping puzzle will allow 120 players, so blame Godbert for making this. That sounds absolutely insane. Trying to see where you're jumping to or from is going to be a mess, and that's probably the whole idea. It's a lot of fun. Apparently the Eternal Bond ceremonies are also getting updated. This includes new ceremonies and new anniversary ceremonies. So if you want to rekindle your vows, you can actually go and do that and see exactly what you had during your Eternal Bond and rekindle that fire within or something. Apparently G-Pose is getting significant updates with new effects, etc. But you're also able to now look at minion actions within it, which is useful for me, obviously, for minion videos. You'll be able to see your player walking, running motions, and also the ability to change the time of day and weather you see in G-Pose. Well, that just makes G-Pose essentially the best thing on the planet, really, for screenshots, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Next up, apparently, there's just a slight tidbit of there's a new tombstone obviously being added as a currency with 4.4 that they haven't talked about it too much. They're revising the Crystal Tower requirements. Apparently someone asked Yoshida in real life and complained that getting into Crystal Tower was too tiring and ridiculous for them. So apparently they're going to be removing the fate element of that. If you actually remember, to get inside Crystal Tower all those years ago, you had to actually do some fates. I think it was 2 separate fates that rarely spawn as part of a prerequisite. Apparently that's just getting stripped from it so people can actually get into there. Apparently the duty recorder is getting updated. They've not really said anything about that, whether or not we're going to be able to record anything or what we're going to be able to record, but apparently they're working on the features within there as well. Hopefully it's launched as a full feature at some point, but who knows. Also, with the Unending Journey, which is the big book where you can preview cutscenes that you've already seen inside in-rooms, you'll also be able to now pick dialogue options within the actual cutscenes instead of always defaulting to first. So instead of having to replay the game all the way through again, choosing all of the various options to see different dialogue, you can now do it through the Unending Journey. So, configuration data will also now be saved to server, meaning that if you've got HUD data, HUD data, your UI has been changed how you like it. If your computer completely blanks out like mine did and I had to get a new hard drive, essentially I won't lose that data. It saves server side. They also point out this is really good for people who use internet cafes and gaming areas where they're not at their official computer. It will actually save the settings and you can import them instead of having to basically take a file with you and upload it to an internet cafe computer, which is obviously a lot easier because a lot of places don't allow you to do that, which just basically is beautiful quality of life. But essentially that's the end of the first part of the live letter. The next part is all to do with Monster Hunter World. So once they're back after their break, the Capcom Monster Hunter World guest Kaname Fujioka, who's the executive director of Monster Hunter World, and the art director Tokuda Yuda is also featured on screen alongside Foxconn and Yoshi P. They're describing their job history, etc., but they also want to go through the actual trailer that they released with Behemoth for the Monster Hunter World game. There's actually a trailer breakdown I did the other day on that if you want to go and watch that, but basically we're going to skip on to when they talk about the Final Fantasy XIV event because that's obviously the information we want to know. They actually debut a new trailer. We're going to do a trailer analysis of this new trailer for Final Fantasy XIV as well at a later point, but for now we're going to be looking at the actual features of the event. So apparently you'll be getting equipment, minions and mounts for this event, and we'll be fighting Rathalos, as if you didn't already know that. Rathalos, King of the Skies, will be released on August the 7th for players on Final Fantasy XIV. The hunt begins, so there'll be a lot of content to do. The trial name will be The Great Hunt, and will have the usual 2 difficulty modes of any trial, normal and extreme. The normal mode of this fight will be the usual 8 players, whereas the extreme will be 4-man only. And there's some reason for this. Apparently this will not be the standard type of Final Fantasy XIV content, and Rathalos will actually ignore threat meters, basically making everyone a tank, meaning there are no role limitations to queue into this particular content. Everyone will have a fair share of baiting the monster and actually dealing with it. This will likely be like the Stone Vigil hard boss, where you have to watch for telegraphs that aren't very well sort of telegraphed, basically. You'll basically have to fight it like a Monster Hunter World boss, and a lot of people are going to be excited about this. Apparently you might have to use potions within here, and you can actually only use up to a maximum of 10, which is also very similar to Monster Hunter World, where you have a limited amount of healing items. There's also a debuff that you can acquire that prevents healing by magic as well, so they're trying to make this very exciting. Extreme mode will also have auto raise enabled, much like in Monster Hunter World. However, you can only faint up to 3 times, so if people die 3 times, the actual instance ends instantly. Much like in Monster Hunter World, if you faint a certain amount of times, then that challenge essentially ends and you have to start it again. They were a bit unsure whether to include this or not, but in the end it ended up going in because it's Monster Hunter content and they wanted to be faithful to that world as well. However, Yoshida does want to point out that he wants to let everyone know they attempted to make a parts breaking mechanic. However, they couldn't get the graphics to be approved for the game rating of the game, and they also couldn't get the game re-rated apart from when they release an expansion package, so they couldn't actually add blood effects or proper part breaking. Yoshida is regretful on this, but at least he tried. So the requirements for this: you must be level 70 and have completed the Stormblood main storyline quests. You must also be item level 320 for the normal mode and 350 average item level for the extreme mode. So we're not actually getting weapons from this event, but we are getting armor sets, and here's what they look like. There's the male and female variant. I'm not sure if there's any more than this. This is basically what they showed, but they look absolutely fantastic. Due to lore reasons, they say this is not going to be a drop, but it will actually be like Monster Hunter World, where you take the drops you get from Rathalos and send it to an NPC to forge that equipment for you. They tried to imagine how Eorzean crafters would come up with gear if they had access to Rathalos parts, without just copying over the Rathalos gear from Monster Hunter. There'll apparently be 2 versions of this gear, a non-dyeable and a dyeable version of it, so obviously maybe extreme and normal mode differences there. In addition to that, we're getting housing items, including the roasting spit. If it doesn't come with the do-do-do-do-do, that noise, then I'll be very upset. If you've not played Monster Hunter before, go and do it. This is one of the highlights. In addition to that, we're also getting 2 minions. We're getting a Poogie minion, which is obviously this pig in a dungarees, and we're also getting a Palico. I think my prayers have been answered. That's fantastic. I don't know if we're getting any more than this, but we're just getting, apparently, this guy with the shovel. I love this. I really want that. And in addition to that, we're also getting a mount, presumably from the extreme mode at a low drop chance. And that's going to be the Rathalos mount, which actually has the Monster Hunter theme as you fly around on it, which is fantastic. An important feature that they wanted to make apparent in this is that this event has no end period. Once this is in the game, it is apparently permanent and always going to be there. This is fantastic, which means that considering it's releasing on the same day as Pagos, we're going to have a lot of content to do, but this isn't going anywhere. I really want that mount, and I'm going to do anything it takes to actually get it. They then talk a little bit of how this worked, how they've been working together for years, how Capcom and Square Enix are best buddies, and how they've always been trying to help each other, and this is the sort of realization of that love in this crossover. And that about wraps up. Basically, they look at the fan festival, which Yoshida apologizes about the debacle. They're hoping to not have similar problems for the European ticket sales, but who knows at this point. Then they go over some of the rewards, again the SDS Fenrir amount from actually obtaining the event, and obviously the 3 separate minions from the 3 separate events. All of that will be on the Mog Station at a later date for you to just straight up purchase for those who can't afford to actually go or can't get lucky lucky enough to get tickets. Then they announced the 5th anniversary Final Fantasy XIV live stream. They do this every time there's a new anniversary. It's a good excuse for them to let their hair down as producers and directors and game designers and just talk. Yoshi P always seems to get quite sloshed in this, drinking his wine and beer, having a good time on live stream, and this will be taking place on Friday, August the 31st at 8 PM until Saturday, September the 1st at 10 AM PDT, which will definitely be worth checking out just for some hilarity. There's also a lot of new merch that's coming, including job pendants and bracelets, etc. But one of the things that really caught my eye that I wanted to mention about everything else, really, you can look at all of this stuff, it's posted everywhere, included on Reddit, is that this is the next part of the Encyclopedia Eorzea, Part 2. This is the second volume that's included 300 new pages of lore and information on the storyline, running all the way up to and including Stormblood. So I'm very excited for that. This will be released on November the 24th this year and will coincide with sales at the Las Vegas event first and will then be later available on the internet for purchase after that date. So I cannot wait to get that. Included in this, with the actual Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 2, you also get an in-game item. This time it's not a minion, it's actually Matoya's hat. This is a nice piece of glamour. It looks, well, it's Matoya's hat, isn't it? It's fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on that either. And that literally wraps up the 45th live letter that was today, the 16th of July 2018. Hopefully I broke this down enough. It's a bit longer than my usual videos, but there was a lot to talk about and a lot to get hyped about. There's a lot of really cool content coming in the next 2 to 3 months, and I cannot wait for any of it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.